Get started with the first prepared speech today, I would request Toastmaster Thomas, who is the listener, it's a very special role. Let me tell you that. Toastmaster Thomas, request you to let us know what you'll be doing this evening.
Being a good listener is just as important as being a good speaker. As a listener, I'll be making note of little tidbits of information from any of the speakers and ask questions near the end of the meeting to see if everyone is paying attention. Okay, so I'll be asking questions at the end of the meeting. Thank you, Alok.
Sure, Toastmaster Thomas. We'll get back to you towards the end of the meeting. And to start off with the prepared speeches, the first speaker works with the India Machine Tools Manufacturers Association. She's married to a chef and says that in the last 1 month, she has gained a lot of weight. Well, today's theme, I took it, it's a metaphor, but I took it quite literally. So I have just probed the speakers today about their interest in singing and songs. And when I asked the speaker, what do you think is important? Is it the song or the singer? She feels it's the singer who is more important than the song because it's the singer who lends the emotion to the song. And she equates singing to even public speaking. And as long as the speaker can emote and lend emotion to the speech, he is going to be more important than the speech itself. Without further ado, for a speech titled The Silver Lining, please welcome Toastmaster Hannah Victoria. Over to you, Hannah.
There is no power greater than a community discovering what it truly cares about. Thank you, Toastmaster Alok, for that wonderful introduction. Good evening, Toastmasters and distinguished guests. In our country, we have countless of businesses, e-commerce websites, startups for every purpose. Successful business models are being built targeting youth and young adults because they are more tech savvy and easily accessible. However, the striking fact is that India's fastest growing demography has been overlooked, barring the healthcare space. This segment, my friends, is the silver lining to humanity, our senior citizens. According to the India Aging Report of 2017, India's population is growing at a 1.8% per annum. Our senior citizens are growing at a 3.8% per annum. By 2050, we will have over 300 million senior citizens. That is close to 20% of our population. If you notice, many a times, media covers senior citizens when they are at the receiving end of physical or emotional wrongdoing. However, this is very true. However, there is a silent revolution that is happening amongst our seniors today. My friends, it is time for us to build a nation, an age-friendly nation. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. If you notice, many of our seniors today are quite independent. They live independently. Maybe because their children are traveling or out of the country. Many of our seniors are tech savvy, quite tech savvy. They know to operate their smartphone. They access the internet. They are easily available on WhatsApp or on a virtual meeting like this. One of my bosses, my senior bosses, he's 66 years old now. He has gone to join the Harvard University for studying a business course. Seniors nowadays are rephrasing the word retirement to refirement. I had the opportunity of working with an admiral, Admiral O.S. Dawson.
Voice gone.
Voice and video gone.
Hello.
Yes.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Uh,
And if you want, you can turn off your video.
sorry.
If there is a network issue, you can turn off your video and you can speak.
Sure.
Hannah?
Hello.
Yes.
Hannah, are you having network issues?
Yes, I think I'm having network issues.
Can we do one thing? Shall we move on to the next speaker and come back to you after Abhay finishes his?
Okay, sure.
Network will be okay?
Yeah.
Alok, you can move on to the second speaker.
Good idea.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Deepika, for the intervention. New problems require new solutions and impromptu solutions. I think we are all trying to navigate the challenges of technology here. And I will get back to you once we are the third speaker. I'm hoping to do that. And we'll move on to the second speaker for now. The guidelines for the second speech, we have an evaluator who I personally feel has always got our attention through his wit, his humor, and his poker face when he delivers the humor. Toastmaster Vaidyanathan would request you to please read out the guidelines for the second speech today.
Vaidya?
Toastmaster Vaidya?
Vaidya, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry, I've just unmuted. My dear Toastmasters and welcome guests, very good evening. The speaker is attempting project 8 from the Competent Communicator Manual. And the objective of this particular project is to select appropriate visual aids and use them to enhance his or her speech. And the time for the speech would be 5 to 7 minutes. Over to TOD.
Thanks a lot, Toastmaster Vaidya, for that. Our second speaker was officially nominated as one of the most pleasing personalities of the club last week. And I would say there are no two words about it. I mean, I've had the privilege of working with him as part of the committee the last 4-5 months. And I always see that he's got a smile on his face whenever, irrespective of the situation. And like I mentioned earlier, in connection with the theme, I asked him, who would you sing your favorite song to? Now, this Toastmaster is very clear. He doesn't want to get into the singing business. He wants to dance to his favorite song. And of late, his pastime has been dancing with his 3-year-old kid. Let us all welcome, for a speech titled The Lifelong Dream Chase, Toastmaster Srijit. Over to Srijit.
Yeah, thank you, Alok. I have to share my screen. Ayappa?
Yes, you can share.
You cannot, it's telling you cannot start screen sharing while the other participant is sharing. I think you are sharing.
No, I'm not sharing.
Okay.
It says Soma is sharing.
It's on, Srijit.
Yeah, it's done.
Yeah, is it
yes.
on?
Yes.
Okay. A dream is not that which you see in your sleep. A dream is that which does not allow you to sleep. Thus said Sri Abdul Kalam. Good evening, Toastmasters.
Good evening.
We all have dreams, don't we? Maybe yours is to be the best at sport or at work or at something you are very passionate about. Sometimes it's hard to keep your dream alive. And at other times, your dreams can remain just as a daydream. Today, I am going to unearth some of my secret dreams and share them with all of you. When I was about 5 years old, I used to go to our paddy field along with my grandmother. I wanted to get into that muddy field along with others and play. But my grandmother saw to it that I never realized this wish. Hence, the dream to become a farmer awakened within me. That was my very first dream, which evaporated when I started going to school. I used to go to school by an auto, and the auto driver, Vinu, he mesmerized me with many adventurous stories. And he impressed me with his marvelous driving skills. He left me so inspired that I was consumed by the ambitious dream to become an auto driver when I grew up. But after some years, unfortunately, he met with a serious accident. And my motivation to follow this dream just faded away. After schooling, when I ended college, I wanted to be like Raghavartan. Now you would be wondering, who was he? Well, he was not a professor. He was not a police officer. He was not a political leader. Then who was he? He was a coconut tree climber who used to visit our house. My friends and me admired his sturdy muscular physique, his huge biceps, and his enviable eight packs. Absolutely super duper indeed. Being inspired by his extraordinary physique, in order to develop one for myself, I tried climbing a tree. And halfway up, I slipped, thump, fell down, and the skin on my both thighs got peeled off. So my dream. I loved cricket very much and played lot of cricket those days. But when I got selected for my college cricket team, then I nurtured the dream to become a professional cricketer. But this dream too collapsed when I realized many juniors were playing better cricket than me. Then one day I happened to see the air show in Bangalore. That left me fascinated. And I was convinced that there was no job that was more I was convinced that there was no job that was more challenging than flying a fighter plane. Thus, a dream of becoming a fighter pilot was born. Though I have cleared the preliminary exams, unfortunately, I got rejected during the final interview for Short Service Commission in Indian Air Force. That's how my dream to become a fighter pilot came crashing down. After my engineering, I was greatly influenced by my friends to study abroad. But because I couldn't get good score in GRE and TOEFL, this dream too remained unfulfilled or unrealized. Later, after my graduation, when I didn't get any job, the pressure began to build up and my sense of frustration deepened. Later, I did get a job, but my life descended into a monotonous and a mechanical mode with no excitement. It was like as plain as this slide. That's when one day I dreamt of overcoming one of my biggest fears, the fear of public speaking. And now, finally, I am walking on the pathway of realizing this dream at Bangalore Toastmasters Club. Every person has a dream of his own, which he hopes will come true someday and miraculously make his life meaningful. And that's why I have revived my childhood dream of becoming a farmer. But This time, not only to play in that muddy fields, but also to enrich the lives of others by providing nourishing food and creating a healthier world. But every great dreams comes with a great responsibility. And I am sure that without hard work and rigorous discipline, a dream will remain as a wish. So, friends, what you get by achieving your dream is not as important as what you become by achieving your dream. Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that really counts. Thank you. Over to you, TOD.
Thanks a lot, Srijit, for that wonderful speech. I think I felt the best part about your dreams was that they were not just dreams. You have, at some point in time in your life, given a shot at realizing them. And I personally believe it takes a lot of courage to do that. Thanks a lot for the speech again. Moving on, the third speaker, the third prepared speech for the day. And to evaluate this particular speech, we have got a speaker of eminence with us. He's from the Spoken Word Toastmasters Club. He's been a Toastmaster for 6.5 years now and is a distinguished Toastmaster as well. We are really pleased to have you with us today, distinguished Toastmaster Rishabh Mehta. Request you to please spell out the guidelines for the speech.
Thank you so much, Toastmaster Alok. Good evening, everyone. I am the evaluator for the next speaker who's attempting the project called Competent CC9, which is Persuade with Power. It's the 9th project in the Competent Communicator Manual. The speech objectives for the speaker are as follows. That is, he has to persuade the listeners to adopt his or her viewpoints or ideas to take some action, appeal to the interest of the audience, use logic and emotion to support your position, your ideas, try to avoid using notes, and the time limits are 5 to 7 minutes. I wish the speaker all the very best, and back to you, Alok.
Thanks a lot, Toastmaster Rishabh. Our third speaker is always bubbling with ideas and suggestions to make our experience in the club better. Now, again, in connection with the theme, I asked him, what is his favorite memory with the song? He said, there is this time when I traveled with my friends and we sang the song, Kabhi Kabhi Mere Dil Mein together. And apparently, now listen to this carefully, guys. Apparently, his favorite line is, Suhag Raat Hai, Ghungat Uta Raha Hu Main. So this is his favorite line in the song. Now, I asked him only for a memory, but he has given us what his fantasy is as well. And I expect nothing less than him, nothing less from him. So for a speech titled, It's Important, please welcome Toastmaster Abhay Kotari. Abhay Kotari, over to you.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. It's important because we all want to be natural and confident speakers, have our voices heard and our ideas acknowledged. And all this started when I heard a quote or read it on the internet. Stuttering begins in the ears of the parents, not in the mouth of the child. And this was said by a speech pathologist named Wendell Johnson from the University of Iowa. What Wendell was doing at the time was he was studying the speech pathology of Native Americans. And he came upon a very startling fact that none of these Native American tribes stuttered while speaking. When he went deep into the cause for this, he made another discovery that neither of these tribes had a word in their dictionary for stuttering. And fascinated by this, he proposed a theory about why the speech defect actually occurs. And Wendell Johnson goes on to say, or his theory is, that all children face difficulty while learning a language, at least initially. And different cultures and different parents react to this in a different manner. Some parents pay too much attention to this and tend to pressurize the child. They even go to the lengths of correcting the child, punishing the child, and labeling the child as a stutterer. And because of this reason, there is a deep mental scar that is developed on the child's mind and is leading to be one of the main causes for social withdrawal and the fear of public speaking. Now, let me tell you what happened when I once walked into a club. The president of the club said, "Welcome, my dear Toastmasters and guests. In this club, you will not only learn how to be a better speaker and a better leader, but you will also get rid of your fear of public speaking." Next, the TM Modi came on and said, "We have 16,800 clubs, 350,000 members in 140 countries. And in the course of 90 years, we have helped thousands of people alleviate from the fear of public speaking." Next, the table topic master came on and said, "Welcome to the most exciting, energetic session which may leave you tongue-tied and confuse you." Finally, my speech evaluator came on and said a lot of good things about my speech, but also mentioned the fact that I was really, really nervous. And the fact that I knew I was nervous put me down for the next 6 months. And each time I would try to go on stage, I would always keep thinking, why and how do I overcome this nervousness? In fact, the club research that I did with all of you over the last 2 days showed me that these statistics were even more true, because 25% or less feel very confident about their prepared speeches. And only 10% or less are confident about their table topics in over 47 participants. And the fact that I didn't realize over this whole period was that with more time on stage, I and you will definitely feel more and more confident. The fear factor or the nervousness and the symptoms show up because you care about your speech. You care about the audience. You care about your message. Your symptoms are definitely your strength. They are not your weakness, my dear Toastmasters and guests. They are not your weakness. They are your greatest strengths. And this evening, I urge you, I appeal to you that if you are speaking to the audience as the president or the general evaluator or the Toastmaster of the day, I request you to only motivate them and leave out the fear part. If you're speaking to them as a guest or as the vice president of membership, I request you to please speak positively. I appeal to you as a table topic master to bring out the best. You may say that, "Welcome to the most exciting, energetic session, which will help you to speak out your best, which will bring out the best speaker in you, make you feel even more confident." And if you are an evaluator, I recommend you, or I would ask you to please recommend the speaker to practice his speech even more, or tell them in a positive manner how he or she could be better, and not by saying how nervous he was or she was in front of a whole audience. By doing this, my friends, let's bring the audience near by speaking positively now and here. Let's bring the audience near by speaking positively now and here. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thanks a lot, Toastmaster Abhay, for that insightful speech. Some nice takeaways for all of us there. Toastmaster Hannah, you now be able to render your speech again?
Yes.
Okay, over to you. You may please start off.
Thank you. Thank you. There is no power for change greater than a society discovering what it cares about. Thank you, Alok, for giving me an opportunity once again. Good evening once again, Toastmasters and distinguished guests. In our country, we have countless of business models models are being built, keeping in mind the youngsters because they are quite tech savvy and easy to access. However, the striking fact is that India's fastest growing demography has been overlooked, barring the healthcare space. This segment, my friends, is the silver lining of humanity, our senior citizens. According to their India Aging Report of 2017, published by the United Nations Population Fund, they state that India's population is growing at a 1.8% per annum. However, our senior citizens are growing at a 3.8% per annum. By 2050, we will have over 300 million senior citizens. That is close to 20% of our population. If you notice, many a times media covers senior citizens when they are at the wrong side of emotional or physical wrongdoing. These stories are definitely true. However, equally true is the silent revolution that is happening amongst our senior citizens today. I'd like to quote what Betty Friedman said. Aging is not lost youth, but it is a stage filled with opportunity and growth. If you see, many of our seniors today live independently, maybe because their children are overseas or out of the city on work. They're quite tech savvy, be it operating their smartphones or accessing the internet, WhatsApp, being in a virtual meeting. Seniors want to make their retirement life count. They want to do the things that they've always been wanting to. It may be traveling, starting a new skill, rekindling an old hobby. They are redefining the term retirement to refirement. One of my former bosses, he's 66 years old now. Last year, he joined the Harvard University to do a business course. I had the opportunity of working with an Admiral O.S. Dawson. I worked with him for over 2 years for a maritime exhibition. He retired from the Navy after serving them for 41 years. He went on to become the Indian High Commissioner in New Zealand. He was instrumental in getting Ulster Lake cleaned. He also led the campaign to discontinue the use of leaded petrol. In his 80s, he headed an organization which supported people who were affected by polio. He died at the age of 87. I must say, what a life well lived. Another example of a senior citizen who many of us know. In his signature, it says, "Stand apart, leave a legacy." It is Mr. Robinson. At the age of 72, he is involved in so many activities, be it motivating youngsters, doing legal consulting, traveling, helping senior citizens. He is such a motivation to be with. My friends, it is time for us to build India into an age-friendly country. Taking Singapore as a case study, by 2030, they will have 35% of their working population over the age of 50. And I'll quickly run through the steps they as a nation took. In the 1980s, they formed their first national committee to study the issues of aging. The biggest recommendation the committee came out with was that to improve the societal attitude towards elderly and aging. In the 1990s, they coordinated a national approach for successful aging. It was coordinated at 4 levels: the individual, family, community, and state. In the early 21st century, they rolled out a plan to build a city for all ages. One of the key strategies in that plan was that to build communities for seniors as part of their national infrastructure, just like how schools, medical, and markets were being planned. Indeed, Singapore will be a great place to live in, while they enable their seniors to live meaningful and active lives. my friends, to conclude, my message to each one of us is that the silver lining of humanity need our support, not to just gray and go by, but to gray great. And it is our responsibility as a community to build India into an age-friendly country. Over to you, Toastmaster Alok.
Thanks a lot, Toastmaster Hannah, for delivering that speech for us. I'm really glad you did it. If you hadn't tried a second time, we would have missed some key insights there. Thanks a lot for that. Thanks a lot for the messages. With that, Toastmasters, we come to the close of our prepared speech session. And like I mentioned earlier, there won't be a table topic session today, so we'll directly be heading to the general evaluation session. And this general evaluation session is going to be led by a Toastmaster who I look up to. He personifies hunger, humility, and humor. Presently, he is the CEO of Enermet Technologies, an organization that develops IoT monitoring solutions for solar equipment. And when I asked him about this theme in general, he said, it's extremely important for you to be the captain of your soul. And whatever be the situation, you should never have an excuse. You should always try and find a way to come out of any situation. In other words, you always need to be sure of the song that you're singing and try to sing with all your effort. Without further ado, I would now request Toastmaster Somashekhar to please lead the general evaluation session. Over to you, Toastmaster Somashekhar.
Thank you, Alok, for that great introduction. You can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and dear guests. I welcome you all to meeting number 1211, and a special welcome to our past president, Tony Simon there. Thank you so much for joining in. Well, dear friends, few months back, we were complaining about traffic jams. We were worried about that pollution on the road, how we wished we didn't want to go to the work, right? How we wish we were at home. Well, congratulations, your prayers have been answered, right? So we are at home now. Are you all happy? Are you all really very happy? Well, I really doubt about it. You definitely want to ameliorate the situation, but how many of you have really started doing those things which you already always wished for? If you had time, I would have done that, I would have did this, right? Now sitting at home, are you finding solutions or are you really giving out excuses? I think that's what the theme is all about today, right? It's better that we always find a solution. If you want to really do something, if you want to achieve something, you need to go all out and find the solution. So this is a very famous Swedish proverb with the theme today. And I would continue that theme saying that those who wish to improve the communication skills, they find the Toastmasters Club. Even though the world, more than 50% is locked down, there are Toastmasters clubs which are online. And today, I really want to congratulate the team. Although adversity hit us a month back, the team led by Deepika, the entire committee, they didn't relax at all. And they have continued this legacy of Bangalore Toastmasters Club. What is that legacy? Having quality meetings. I think for a job well done, we need to really congratulate them, right? Do you miss that applause? Right? I think we really miss it, Deepika, but all of you truly deserve it.
can be heard?
At the evaluation session, the meeting started sharp at, well, not 6:30, it's 6:15. That's really awesome because the committee had planned the new members being inducted to the club. I think the committee did a great job starting the meeting early so that actually we can end the meeting on time. And our Sergeant at Arms, Priyanka, you did a wonderful job, Priyanka. Let's give a round of applause for Priyanka for starting the meeting on time and setting a great tone for the meeting. Initially, I just noted down that you should have used some quotes or some one-liners. But later, I found that after finishing the induction session, before introducing the president, you had plenty of them. Great job, Priyanka. A great introduction for our well-deserved president, and that really went on for quite a long time, I would say. So overall, that was a fantastic opening for the meeting. My only recommendation, again, the voice modulation is something probably you can just work on. Again, my personal opinion. So the variation in voice could be altered. It was actually very monotonous. So apart from that, I didn't have any comments on your session. Then our president, Deepika, took over the meeting. Personal stories are always great. And that was a Sherlock Holmes story, Deepika. Superb that was. I will use that story, and I hope you have not patented it in many of my talks later. Well, again, personal stories is something we always remember. And today you had two of them. In fact, you also brought in Fatah Khan into a picture. So wonderful, Deepika. And there's a lot of things to learn from you, especially in the online meeting. I really saw that you are still using the body language, voice modulation, facial expression. So everything was out there. And for the guests or actually who have joined here, if you want to watch only the speaker, you can pin them on your screen so that you can only see them. I don't know, if you're not aware of that feature, you can do that. Else, the speakers will be hidden here and there, right? You can pin them on your screen. So that's what I did for every speaker. So Deepika, great job done. Well, what comment I had? During the session, you gave a lot of instructions on how to manage this online meeting. Maybe I felt it's the time to have some IT guy in our team. Maybe the president need not talk about all that. Maybe Sergeant Arms can cover, or there is now an position, open position for somebody who could really use some tips on every meeting, actually, right? How it could be improved. Otherwise, a great job done. So I feel you two deserve a great round of applause. All right.
Thank you.
We then Toastmaster Alok, our master of ceremony. So dear Alok, people love to see your handsome face, right? So that's what you could have worked on a little bit. Master of ceremony is very, very important. But, we are seeing that enlightenment in you, the light is actually behind your head. All right. So, again, Toastmaster Alok, nicely crafted words, great introduction. You touched on all aspects of Toastmasters. It was wonderful. Suggestion, Alok, you told it twice, I believe. There is an interesting session coming up at 7:30. Even Deepika told this. There's an interesting session coming up at 7:30. That's correct, but the speakers are also, that's also an interesting session, right? So I felt actually you are really putting our speakers bit down. So I would say you should have really kept that. Well, I'm not saying it's not interesting, but then I felt you were stressing too much on the 7:30 session than the speakers. So that was my only comment, Alok. Otherwise, great job done for you. Wonderful. Keep it up. Always love to hear it. All right. Then we had our first speaker, Hannah, and I would request her evaluator, Vijay Kalkundri, to give his feedback. Over to you, Vijay.
Thank you, Toastmaster Soma, for that. Okay, good evening, everyone, and Toastmaster Hana in particular. Age, they say, is a matter of mind, and if you don't mind it, it does not matter. So today, it was such an amazing speech that you're giving when we all are locked up inside our home, and there are a lot of startups which are trying to solve so many issues. You brought a very, very pertinent issues. The experienced people who live with us form a backbone. They are the bundle of experience and enthusiasm. So that's when they can guide and help the upcoming generation to go to the next phase. So you had a very, very apt topic for the time. You had researched your topic very well. They say
Vijay, we lost you.
Vijay?
Population, how they are very important.
Vijay, we lost you for a while now.
Oh, is it? I'm sorry for that. Like, am I back now?
Yeah, you are.
Okay, thank you. So I was mentioning that it was a very, very well researched topic where you mentioned lot of citations about the place of research what you've taken. They say that citing a source of information improves the credibility and adds impact to your speech and point of view. That's what exactly you did. So where you actually mentioned the source of information. That's it. Like, what are the few slight areas which you can rehearse, can take your speech to the next level? The first is the practice, like the 5 P's: practice, 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 and practice. This will take your speech to a next level where you can actually give a speech with a flow at which you have actually prepared. I know there was a slight problem with the technology, but taken aside that, like, slight more practice would have done better impact of the audience. So overall, you had a body language. Other than that, like, what is the clarity of your speech was very good. You had used a good vocal variety where you actually mentioned there was a lot of energy in what you spoke. You tried to make an eye contact. I'm sure it's very difficult in the online mode of speaking. There were gestures. You are at a comfort because that was a speech which you felt closely to your heart. So that's why the talk came right from your bottom of your heart. So with that said, I can only say this, like, efforts and courage are not enough without the purpose and direction, said by John F. Kennedy. And you had that conviction in what you spoke. And we all liked your speech, and I wish you all the best for your further speeches. With that, back to the G.
Thanks, Vijay. Well done. And Hana, wonderful speech. I would say it was a very loaded speech, very powerful and content. And you took the courage to say that speech again. That's wonderful. So on a lighter side, I think Robinson will be really mad at with you because he has been telling that he is only 60 years old. You made him 72. Hana, wonderful speech again for both the speakers and the evaluator. So let's give a round of applause. All right. Dear friends, so I thought giving a speech in front of the computer would be much easier than standing in front of the a live audience. But what I really learned in last 1 month is actually almost the same. You have the same pressure. In fact, actually, this is much more because sometimes you don't know whether your voice is really reaching them. So the practice, I believe, should still continue, right? So let's see actually what our next evaluator has to say about Speaker Srijit. May I request Vaidya to give his feedback on Srijit? Over to Vaidya.
Thanks, Toastmaster Somashekar, my dear Toastmasters and guests. Very good evening. The presentation delivered by Srijit today rightly exemplified the dictum: a picture is worth more than 1,000 words. And 6 wonderful examples, right from his dream of being a farmer to his dream of studying abroad. It was wonderfully explained. And I can mention many points which were of top class. To begin with, clarity of visual aids. No words were used It was only pictorial description. Brilliant job done when it comes to clarity of visual aid that was used. And the second one was the relevance. Every slide was relevant to the dream that you were chasing. Be it the paddy field that you had pictorially represented when you were young, when you wanted to become a farmer, or when you wanted to become an Air Force pilot, you had displayed a fighter plane. So everything was relevant to what you spoke. Excellent job done. And the transition from one slide to another slide was as smooth as butter. Right from your childhood, you started off from your childhood when you wanted to become a farmer, and then you moved on to your school when you wanted to become an auto driver, then to a college and to your work, and the transitions were spot on. Excellent. And the best part of your presentation was the plain slide. It didn't have any picture, it didn't have any word, but it conveyed the message. Awesome. And the icing on the cake was the message that you delivered. Dream will remain a wish if you don't act on it. How powerful that statement is. You may have a wonderful presentation, but if you don't have a message to deliver, then it will come as a crap. But here you delivered a wonderful presentation and topped it up with a brilliant message. Superb. Srijit, I don't see any specific area where you might need to work upon, because all the boxes, be it transition, be it relevance, be it clarity of visual aids, be it the way you delivered, and be it the personal examples, all the boxes were ticked. Awesome job. Toastmaster Srijit, you wouldn't have realized the dreams that you had earlier, but you had a dream of becoming a world-class public speaker. And for sure, it is going to be reality for the simple reason you are acting on it. So I wish you all the very best for your upcoming landmark project. Over to the G.
Thank you. Thank you, Vaidya. Vaidya, I still wonder why you don't share your video. This is the third time I'm seeing this. Okay, so we'll talk about that offline.
People will be scared.
All right. So, Srijit, thank you so much for sharing your secret dream. We thoroughly enjoyed your speech, as we do always. One suggestion, especially when you are online, I saw two pictures from Shutterstock. Just be watchful, all right? So sharing something which is patented or actually which has been signed is a problem, all right? So just be watchful when you are online. So otherwise, a wonderful speech. So round of applause for both our speakers and Vaidya. All right. Then speaker number 3, our greatest Abhay Kotari. May I request his evaluator, Rishabh Mehta, to give his feedback, please. So over to Mr. Rishabh, Toastmaster Rishabh.
Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and Toastmaster Abhay in particular. Of all the speeches that I've heard, especially when it comes to Persuade with Power, I would say the topic that you had for this particular speech was so simple, was so easy to notice, yet something that was very brilliant and a very significant one. What I really liked in your speech was that it is a subject that all of us could relate to as Toastmasters, as audience, and we never really thought of as to how a simple words of appreciation or the way we tell things can really hamper or affect a growth of an individual. Apart from that, what I really liked was the fact that the presentations that you had was not just readable, was not just effective, less data made it very easy for all of us to go through and glance it, but every single time that you had a picture, there was a reference on the on the bottom right corner that this source has been used, this picture has been used from Google. When there was a research done, you mentioned that this research is done from 47 members of the club. So that added more credibility to your speech, and that made us realize that you've put in efforts to make sure that what the thoughts that you're conveying upon. What I also liked is where you mentioned about how you mentioned in your speech that I ask you, I appeal to you, that bring in the emotional connect that was required from you as a speaker to everyone else, and we all could relate to you in a much better manner. Having said that, things that you could have worked upon better in this particular speech was first, the relevance of the stories. You started off with a speech and a title. You started off with a story of stuttering, then you came to the club, and then a personal story. All in all, I felt that, the relevance of this part of stuttering was not very clearly laid out. I understand that the point was about, giving members that extra push or motivating them a lot more, but that did not really come out that well to me as an individual. The relevance of title was also something that was not really, emphasized upon. You said the title is important, but it did not come out that well, as I was expecting it to be. What you could have done is probably towards the end, you could have tied all the three stories together so that not just the aspect of why stuttering, why club, and why your personal example is tied back, but the emphasis on, the title part would have also played in a lot more emphasis. Having said that, when it comes to your speech, effective evaluation, yes, you did appeal to, the interest of the audience. Yes, there was logic and emotional connect to which, you supported and you argued with all of us. But the only thing that I felt was slightly missing, that it kind of came out as a request and not really an appeal where you're persuading all of us with power. That authority was missing in your voice, and that's something that you could have worked upon. Otherwise, for a subject so simple and so effective, for a story, so simple and yet effective, I would say that you have done tremendously well. Just work upon the power that you carry forward in your voices, and the relevance of story and title, and that would really help you grow as a better speaker. I wish all the best to you for all your future speeches. And back to the general evaluation.
So thank you. Great job, Rishabh and Abhay. As Rishabh mentioned, it was a fantastic speech. What I really noticed, the main difference was modulation. You are really varying your voice, and I could see many variants today. Now, personally, after listening to these last two speeches, the second and third, Abhay and Srijit, so I had a confusion in mind. So I think what we saw in both the speakers' speeches, it was only the presentation with the commentary. All right. So it is just a PPT and commentary. At least Srijit, we saw it once, but Abhay, I'm sure actually none of us know his face today. Now, does that really meet or actually, meet the core values of Toastmasters? Because it is about talking live. Well, of course, I think there's a limitation with the tool where you cannot see you as well as the presentation. But I feel members should make it a point at least to be present there, talk about the content, and then move to the presentation. Again, my personal opinion can be debated and discussed, but that's what I felt after watching these two speeches. Now, so with that, I think we had a wonderful prepared speech session. Of course, we missed the table topic session. We now will move to the tag team. May I request the timer for the day, Toastmaster Ayyappa, to give his report, please.
Good evening once again. Everybody is on time. Nobody crossed even, the average time, that is, everybody within 6 minutes. Nobody crossed beyond 6 minutes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ayyappa.
Thank you.
And our counter, Toastmaster Sanjay.
So Alok Simha, he used 4 R's and one and filler word I noticed was and. Somshekar 12 R's, one and fillers is so. Hannah 4 R, Srijit 2 R, Abhay, a filler word I noticed is and. Rishabh Mehta 9 R's and filler was Rahil 2 R's and 2 Ayyappa 3 R. That's it.
Thank you, Sanjay. And Nikhil Single, who is not single. Over to you.
Thanks, Somshekar. So all the speeches were really wonderful today. So I didn't came across any major grammatical mistake as such. But yes, what I noticed is none of the speaker has used the word of the day. So I'll encourage and tell all the speaker to try to use word of the day as more as possible so that it can enrich our vocabulary. That's the purpose of the word of the day. So that's why we used to say it at the beginning of the meeting so that you can try to use it during your speech. Thank you, Somshekar.
Thank you, Nikhil. And listener, actually, do it now, Alok.
General Evaluator. Good evening, Toastmasters. Now we get to see if you really listen to all the speeches. So my first question is, complete the sentence. A dream is not that which you have during a sleep. Complete the sentence.
That which keeps you awake.
Okay, yeah, Alok has got that. Okay. The next question, who said stuttering begins in the ears of the parents and not in the mouth of the child?
Abhay Kothari.
No. He quoted somebody saying that. Okay, so who's the person he quoted? Oh yes, exactly. Who said Rendell?
Priyanka.
Okay. Priyanka.
No,
Yes.
no,
okay.
not me.
Who's that?
Not
No, it's me, Zareen. It's
Oh
me, Zareen.
yes. Congratulations, Zareen.
Yeah.
You seem to be a keen listener. Okay. 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 And at what rate are senior citizens growing in India according to India Aging Report?
Percent.
3.5%.
1.5.
Close, but no. Close, but not.
3.5%.
No.
3.8.
Yes. 3.8 is the correct answer. Okay. So these
That's
are the
close.
questions.
You should give it to me.
No.
That's quite close, Thomas.
I know, but somebody got it right, so they get it better. Anyway, so those are the questions for the day. Over to you, General Evaluator. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. So for all our tag team and Thomas, let's give one round of applause. Wonderful job, team. All right. Okay. So the voting link has been sent, and I'll get the password.
Soma sir, I sent it to you on the personal chat on Zoom itself.
Okay.
Can we have the link, please? I can't read it.
Bosco sir, the link is on the BT group.
On the WhatsApp group?
On the WhatsApp group, sir.
But the code is not there.
Soma sir will just announce that.
Yeah. The code, if you are all ready, is 2404. Okay, so with that, I go the back to ceremony, Alok. So thank you for giving me an opportunity. So all of you, be safe, and over to you, Alok.
Thanks a lot, Soma sir, for that wonderful session. We definitely are enriched by your feedback this evening. And thanks a lot, everyone, for listening to me throughout the last 1 hour. And with that, I hand over the baton to Toastmaster Ayappa.
Thank you, Toastmaster Alok. It was a wonderful, you just wonderfully walked us through the session. And let's give a huge round of applause to Toastmaster Alok. Now it's a time for all of us that we all have been waiting for. And now I'm going to introduce a person. He's one of the finest speakers I look up to always. He's currently based out of London. He's a management consultant, specializing in organizational transformation and leadership development. He's world champion public speaking, first runner-up in the year 2015, and again he was in the finalist in the year 2017.
43 minutes.
He's keynote speaker, coach, and a mentor.
He's not closing. No.
Please put your hands together to welcome Toastmaster Aditya Maheshwaran.
Thank you, Ayappa. Can you hear me, Ayappa?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Thank you, and it's lovely to be here with all of you. I just joined in a few minutes ago, so congratulations. Whoever won the ribbons in the ribbon so far. It's always an honor to speak to any club, area, division, district in Bangalore. because I started my Toastmasters journey 15 years ago in Chennai. And at that time, we were one club in Chennai. And for anything and everything, we used to look up to Bangalore for advice, guidance, mentorship. And a lot of those people who did advise us then are on this call, I'm sure, today. So thank you, everybody, for inviting me. So we used to, in fact, call Bangalore the Makkah of Toastmasters when we were starting off in Chennai. And you have a rich legacy, and you're keeping that up very well. And so has your club, Bangalore Toastmasters Club. So thank you again, Ayyappa, for inviting me to this meeting. I love to spend these Zoom sessions that I've been doing so constantly over the last few weeks to answer and take questions. So I'll ensure that we have enough time towards the end of the session so that I can answer specificities that will help you in your speaking journey. Well, to begin with, one of the questions when Ayyappa asked me to join the meeting, he said, why don't you speak about speaking with impact and what can our audiences take away from your journey of learning to speak with impact in front of audiences? Now, I want to start with a question. How many of you have felt that you've given a speech, you've ticked all the boxes, yet somewhere you felt that you didn't create enough impact on the audience, or you lost the contest, even though you did everything you can to tick the boxes? I'm sure a lot of you, and me, of course, we've all felt that, isn't it? I remember in 2007 was my first experience of contesting in an international speech contest through Toastmasters. And I was so angry after the contest as I lost. And I went to my mentor and said, I had everything. How could I lose? I had the right gestures, the right voice modulation, the right script, opening, body, conclusion. I divided the stage into 3 parts. Everything you told me, mentor, but I still lost the speech. How is that possible? My mentor said something that was very, very useful for me. She said, public speaking is not about what you input, it's about what you output to the audience. And so today, let me spend 15 minutes on what I have learned in this journey from that output perspective. I've realized that to speak with impact, work needs to be done, not just in terms of skill building. Work needs to be done to your head, heart, and hands. The head talks about the mindset of a speaker. The heart speaks about your ability to identify with that audience that you're speaking to at that particular instance. And the hands speak about the skills and all the things you've learned through your Toastmasters journey that come of help, which includes your voice, your hands, your speech crafting techniques. But it's not just the hands, isn't it? It starts with the head and heart and then the hands. And when you have this a calibrated development of the head, heart, and hand, your ability to create impact on your audience increases manifold. So let's look at one simple learning from each of these, the head, heart, and hand, that may be useful for you the next time you craft and deliver an impactful speech. Let's start with the head. So what's the mindset of a speaker? In my experience, friends, over the last 15 years as a Toastmaster and a professional speaker, I realized mindset starts with a question. What role do you see yourself play on stage? Not the job. Your job is to probably give a 5 to 7 minute speech. That is the same job for every speaker who gets on a Toastmaster stage. Is, hey, deliver a 5 to 7 minute speech. But my question is different. My question is, what role do you see yourself play? To analyze that, let me give you a quick anecdote. And this is a very famous anecdote, which a lot of you might have heard of. It speaks of the janitor in NASA. So a group of people walked into NASA. This has been attributed to many groups of people, including President Kennedy at that time after the moon landing. Sometimes when I give this example, I say some of my friends walked in, but nobody cares who walked in. There are a few people who walked into NASA and they saw a janitor doing his job. And a janitor's job, as you know, is to clean and dust and keep the place tidy. Now they asked the janitor, so what's your role? What's your role here? And the janitor said something that was so intriguing. The janitor said, my role at NASA is to put man on moon safely. And they laughed and said, excuse me, you're a janitor. Your job's to clean equipments. He said, hey, that's my job, is to clean the equipments. But my role in NASA is to put man on moon safely. Let me tell you how. If I don't do my job properly, which is if I don't clean properly, there is an increased scope of vulnerability in the equipment which are so essential for the launch. And if you go 3 steps further, it creates a greater chance of risk of life, and therefore man can't go to moon safely. So my job is to clean, my role is to put man on moon safely. If you look at this example, you realize your job is limited by the job description, by who's hiring you, or just what's on paper. But the role, you're completely free to choose what role you want to play. And now imagine this. Do you think there will be a difference in the output produced by this janitor who assumes his role is to put man on moon safely with respect to another janitor who assumes his role is to clean the floor? There would be an insane amount of difference in the quality of output, isn't it? It is very true for a speaker as well, my friends. When I joined Toastmasters, I saw my role as a person still in engineering college, loves achievement. I saw my role as collecting ribbons in Toastmasters. My role in Toastmasters was to win the trophy, collect the ribbons, and I'm sure some of you are nodding in your. Remember, you're on video, so don't nod too vehemently. So my role was that, and think about this. If my role, my primary objective as a mindset, I never told anybody that, was to collect ribbons or win trophies, what kind of behaviors get self-selected automatically? The way I talk, the topics I choose, the way I speak would be a certain way, isn't it? Whether or not I plan for it, the mindset self-selects behavior. But over time, I realized that my role changed. The way I saw myself as a public speaker changed. Especially after the 2015 World Championship of Public Speaking, when I got the runner-up. I got a mail from a lady in France which said, Aditya, I saw your speech, and I had not talked to my brother for the last 5 years, and I saw your speech, Scratch, where you said, a scratch stays only as long as you don't polish it. And Aditya, that message spoke to me. So I called up my brother, and we've reconciled after 5 years. Thank you. At that moment, I realized that the job is still to speak on stage, but the role that I saw myself play was now a catalyst, a person who can touch lives, a person who can probably even change lives. So now ask yourself the question, with that as the role, do you think different kind of behaviors will self-select itself? The kind of speech topics you select, the way you interact with the audience. It's just like 2 doctors, isn't it? Imagine 2 doctors, both same qualifications, have the same jobs, but Dr. 1 thinks of his role as someone who's maximizing his hospital's profits, and Dr. 2 assumes his role to be someone who is alleviating disease in the society. Now, on the look of it, their jobs are the same, but your experience with these 2 doctors would be very different, isn't it? It's the same for public speaking. So you can speak very well, tick all the boxes, but it starts with a mindset. If your mindset is elevated, because as the janitor taught us, the mindset has no bar, it has no limit. It's your creativity that's the limitation. A school teacher can see his or her job as a person who evaluates papers, or as a person who's creating a next generation of leaders. And the way he or she sees their role self-selects behaviors in the classroom on the day in front of a difficult student. So that's the first change that I made in my journey, that my journey made in me, rather, which is the head, the mindset, the role that you see yourself. The second item to calibrate is the heart, isn't it? So the heart is the ability of yours to identify with what connects with your audience. Now, too often in Toastmasters, I find my mentees come to me and ask, Aditya, but that speaker has gone through that tragedy in life. He has done something great in life. I have nothing special. So how can I create a speech that wins the world championship? Have you ever had that question? When you look at great speeches, they've gone through tragedies, they've gone through setbacks, they've gone through failures, they've lost loved ones. 3 people in their speeches die, but you have nothing like that to speak about. So how do you create impact on stage? Now, if you work on the heart bit, you realize it's not magnitude that creates impact. It's connection that creates impact. I repeat, it's not magnitude of your story or experience that creates impact. It's the connection and relatability that creates impact. Meaning, continuing the same example of my 2015 speech, I remember in that speech called The Scratch, I had an example of the Holocaust, the World War II, where nearly 8 million people died in the worst of conditions. And my speech had a line which said, scratches are not just created now, it also passes through generations. None of us were alive to witness the horrific incidents of the World War, but the scratches still linger, doesn't it? This was the line in the speech. Now, 15 minutes before my World Championship finals in Las Vegas in Caesars Palace, a place very unlike to host a speaking championship, isn't it? But there we were. And 15 minutes before my competition, the speakers were allowed to the backstage. And as I was moving to the backstage, I saw thousands of people waiting to get into the plenary auditorium because it was free seating. Wherever there's free seating, not just in India, there is a huge ruckus and crowd. There was one poor sergeant at arms who was manning the door, whose job was not to allow any of these thousands of people to get into the auditorium. As I walked through that crowd, because I was allowed to get in, I was a speaker, I saw that the sergeant at arms was being harassed, abused, and he nearly had a tear in his eye. Well, I had bigger things to worry about, didn't I? A world championship of public speaking. So I went backstage, I mic'd up, but something in my mind, something in my heart actually was feeling for that person. And it was related to scratch, isn't it? So 10 minutes before my speech, I took out the entire segment of the World War and Holocaust and 6 million people dying out of my speech. And if you watch my speech now, you would instead find that impromptu example of asking the audience, when did you last scratch another person? Was it a friend, a loved one, or right now at the convention 15 minutes ago on a sergeant at arms who didn't allow you to get in because you came in too late? Scratch. And you know what? I got 11 seconds of unadulterated applause, which even the Holocaust example had never given me in previous rounds. Does that mean the audience was mean? They didn't care about 8 million people dying in wicked conditions, but they connected with a little frail sergeant at arms feeling a little moody? No, the audience is not mean. It's just that while they sympathize with World War or the magnitude of 8 million people dying, they don't relate to it except it being an intellectual exercise of sympathy. But one at a time, feeling a little bad, triggered an entire emotion in them at that moment, which led to a 11-second applause, because they felt guilty of committing that crime. Not only did they sympathize, but they were able to empathize and felt guilt at that moment. So public speaking is learned rationally, but it's fundamentally an irrational process, isn't it? Because if I present to you, hey, I have a speech where 8 million people die, and I have a speech where one guy feels upset, which is bigger, which is better to create a speech? Probably any logical person would say, hey, come on, this is too simple to take to a world champion stage. Let's talk about people dying. Let's talk about tragedy. Let's talk about achievements. Let's talk about climbing the Everest. But in reality, in truth, what connects with the audience is what is relatable to them, what triggers emotion in them at that point in time. Guilt, fear, joy, nostalgia, ecstasy, all of these are emotions that can be triggered at the moment with examples that relate. So when you develop as a speaker, not just in your head, the mindset, but also heart, which is the extent to which you can identify what turns on and turns off your audience at that point in time, you elevate as a speaker. And that happens all the time, isn't it? For example, how many times when you were growing up and you were a small kid, how many times did your mother tell you to wake up early, be disciplined? You never listened to her. But when you're an adult, you probably paid 50,000 rupees, attended a 1-hour motivational speech by someone who flew down to India, and then you went back home and probably told your mother, Mom, I found out the one formula for success. And she asked you what, and you said, it's about waking up early in the morning and being disciplined. She probably told you, what the hell have I been telling you from your youngster? So logically, who had more access to you? Your mother. Who loved you more? Your mother. Who told you that more number of times? Your mother. Who do you love more? Your mother. But who did you listen to? That one random guy who you paid money to. It's not logical. The public speaking or impact or connection is not a rational activity. It's an irrational activity, but learned rationally, unfortunately, at Toastmasters. So the second is heart, the ability to identify with what connects with your audience and tap that, extract that, and sway them with that magic that you have. The third and the last point is hands. You've calibrated your head and your heart. Now let's come to your hands. The hands are the skills that you learn as a speaker. Hands are your ability to weave words magically into a speech. Hands are your ability to have the right modulation, have the right smile, the gestures in your speech. Now, when you work only on your hands, so to speak, without working on the head and heart, you are this guy with this gift of the gab, but you seldom create impact because you haven't identified with your audience through your heart, and you haven't identified with the role that you see yourself play with your head. So if I'm a person who just wants to win the trophy and I have zero identification with my audience, how many speakers you know in Bangalore who are terrific speakers, but they're not the people you want to listen to when you feel down and depressed in your life? When you feel down and depressed in your life, you may want to hear a speech by somebody else. But when you're feeling happy in your life, you may love to respect and listen to a speaker. That's because they have great skills, the hands, but they probably haven't calibrated the head and heart to it. So friends, to summarize, a speaker who creates impact on the audience has this unique ability to have the mindset, the identification, and the skill working together on their behalf for success. And when you see such a speaker on stage, or when you even see such a speaker speaking to you in a conversation, you get drawn to them like a magnet, because not only they're speaking at you, they're speaking to you. Let me pause now at the risk of going overboard with too much information. Let me pause, and I would love to take as many questions as possible in the time that we have left. And Ayappa, should I rely on you to tell me when to stop?
Sure, Aditya, actually. Now let's ask if the members have any questions, and probably after that we can start. Members, if you have any questions, you can start asking questions. And when you're asking questions, please unmute, and others, please mute yourself.
Sure. And the questions can be on any topic. It doesn't need to be restricted to what I just spoke now. So feel free to put down anything.
Aditya Bosco here.
Hello, sir. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Wonderful to see you again after a long time. As a Toastmaster, as a competitor, and presently as a motivational speaker, I have one question. Have you at any time regretted what you said or did not say on stage when it had to be said?
Thanks, Bosco, for that question. I've never regretted anything that I've said on the stage at that moment, because something that's important for a speaker is conviction. I've always gone back though, Bosco, home and reflected on, could I have said something better? Could I have used better skills on stage than what I did? But at that moment on stage, I've never taken back or regretted anything that I've said, because what I say with conviction at that point in time. Of course, if I have been particularly vicious on stage, which doesn't happen so much on stage, it happens especially on emails and stuff, I have regretted that same moment. But on stage, I've always tried to project conviction in what I say. And I think over time, Bosco, the other way, only what I'm convinced in, I end up saying on stage. But I still like to go back home and reflect on whether I could have said something better. Probably I would do that after the session, go back and reflect on how else could I have communicated head, heart, and hands.
You did very well. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi, Aditya. A question from me. This is about what you just said. This is Abhay.
Hi, Abhay.
The question that I have for you today is, you spoke about calibration of the head, the hands, and the heart. But what steps do we really take, and how do we develop those connections? And how do we develop those calibrations? What practical tips can you give us to observe? How do we observe the audience to develop those connections of the heart? How do we see ourselves in the role that we want to play or want to be as speakers?
Right. So with respect to the head, Abhay, it's very simple. It's counterintuitive, and the truth in life is actually not self-evident. It's counter-evident, because it's very tempting. You can't just tell your head, "Hey, let's save the world." No, your head is going to want to win that trophy. So the best way to calibrate your head is learn through observation. Ask yourself, why did I like one teacher in school better than the other teacher? Both were equally skilled, because this one teacher was not there to just correct my paper. She was there to build me as a responsible adult. So you find through just think of the two bosses that you work, the best boss and the worst boss. Same qualification, same age, probably they come from the same background. But you liked one more, not because for the skill, because the role that they saw themselves play was not just a manager, but probably a leader. So through just common observation, you realize that unless you play a role that is larger than the job that you have at hand, the experience of people that they derive from you would be limited to that particular job that you limit yourself to. Sometimes in Toastmasters, Abhay, I'm sure you'd realize that there may be 50 DTMs in your club or 40 past district officers in your club, but the person you want to naturally gravitate to when you want advice could be that 2-year-old member in your club who's not even a CC. Because all these are great on paper, but being a DTM is a on paper thing. But being distinguished, you got to earn that from people. Being a competent communicator is a title, but being competent is something you got to earn through hard work. So that requires calibration of head, heart, and hands.
Wow. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Aditya, here is a question from Toastmaster Bandana. She says, it's not good enough. Okay, she says, she has a problem in writing the speeches. Whenever I sit down to do it, I'm clueless.
Ayappa, we lost you.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, Aditya, here is a question. So whenever she starts writing speeches, and she'll be clueless, she don't know what to write. Any suggestions?
Statement. Let me put a question mark at the end and answer that question. All right. So whenever she starts writing a speech, she doesn't know what to write. If only I had a pill to solve that problem. Well, I like to view this as jumping the gun. A lot of us have a topic in mind and immediately start writing a speech, isn't it? And therefore, when you put pen on paper, you don't know where to start or how to start, or is it with a story? Should I start with the opening? Should I? And after writing 3 pages, you see there are so many things sprouting out of your speech that you don't know what you're trying to convey to the audience, and we get into this mess ourselves. But to a new person who reads the script, it seems obvious that it's all convoluted, but to us it doesn't. So let's analyze what we can do to avoid that. There is a step between selecting a topic and writing a speech that I like to follow, which is, to me, is very important. You see, the topic is just what you want to talk about. You know, let's take an example. So you donated blood 2 days ago, so you want to talk about blood donation. Great. Now, there is the next step, which is, what is the core message, or what's the insight that you're trying to convey to the audience? You see, when you zoom in too much into the topic, you could just talk about the process of blood donation. Step 1, go to the blood bank. Step 2, donate blood, etc., etc. When you zoom out a little, you're realizing the purpose of the speech is not to talk about the process. It's about how blood donation can save lives. If you zoom out a little more, the purpose can completely change. It's not about how blood donation can save lives. It's about telling the audience, what of yourself are you giving to the world? For me, it was blood. For you, it could be time to a loved one. For you, it could be money to a charity. But the core purpose is not blood donation. It's about what of ourselves are we giving to the world. Now, if I zoom out a little more, it becomes a little too abstract. So let me zoom in and zoom out and arrive at the right focal point where the topic is still blood donation, but the core message that I'm trying to leave the audience with is something else. Now, in step 2, I've realized that, okay, the topic is blood donation. The core message is, what can we give of ourselves to the world? Now start putting pen on paper. You start from a higher level of inspiration and your thoughts would flow. You may still start with a story or opening, but your speech will be more coherent and there'll be less versions of it you need to prepare for lack of knowing what you're talking about. If you feel that you're a kind of speaker who has version 25 in your laptop, version 42 in your laptop of your speech, you're probably not doing the right thing at the right time in preparation.
Hi, Aditya. Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Yes, go ahead.
Cool. Awesome. Right. So I'm Shabri. Today happens to be my first day, and I'm really grateful that I got to listen to you today. Really inspiring. So my question is more on lines of how were you able to marry your passion of public speaking and Toastmasters along with your career? So you spoke about the role in your head. What was that overarching goal that you had for life? And I see that you are a consultant. You know, how did you kind of take both of that together, and how does that work out for you?
So when I joined Toastmasters, I heard a past international president say something, and that I started trusting that, and that became my motto at Toastmasters, which is you join Toastmasters not to become better at Toastmasters. You join Toastmasters to become better outside of Toastmasters, isn't it? Some of us get caught up within the walls of Toastmasters, which is very joyful itself. But as Shakespeare says, sometimes it's full of song and fury, but signifying nothing. So my objective, luckily because of my mentors and the past international president I was referring to, I realized early on that the more I'm able to see the utility of Toastmasters outside of Toastmasters, not just in a job, it could be a contribution to the society, it could be in your own community, it could be at your work, it could be in terms of creating larger impact. But what are you taking out of Toastmasters and using outside of Toastmasters? So then I realized that my first few years at work, I was having this dichotomy. During weekends, I used to be a Toastmaster, a distinguished Toastmaster, doing speeches. And Monday morning, I would go back to my IT job in Chennai, doing lines of code. Hey, nothing wrong in coding, but I was not even good at it, nor was I interested in it, right? So I felt this dichotomy in my first few years in my career. Luckily, I got a break in 2012 when I took a break to do my MBA in Hyderabad. And that's when I realized that I've accumulated some skills. I was lucky to join Toastmasters quite early on when I was 19. And I had been a Toastmaster for 6 years by the time I was 25. So I can't go back to this dichotomy after this stage. Life's given me a lucky break, a pause in my career through my MBA. How do I come out of the MBA and have a more synchronous life between what I like doing and my career? So I made this triangle. So a triangle has 3 vertices, and I put on the 3 vertices 3 things that are non-negotiables in my job. One thing is public speaking and the ability to be in front of thought leaders, people, and speak with impact. The second bit was management and how organizations function, which is understanding what makes money, how's money made, and how management structures work. The third bit is psychology and philosophy, because I was always intrigued about the brain versus mind theories. The mind from a philosophical point of view, the brain from a neuroscientific point of view. So I decided I wanted to work something which fits into these 3. So I got placed through campus, but in a good job, but that was a product management job, a dream job for most MBA folks, but it is far from this triangle that I was talking about. Correct. So I graduated without a job, to be honest, because I was steadfast in what I wanted. But soon I did get a job as a management consultant, specializing in culture change, organization transformation, leadership development. My job is to work with leaders of communities, institutions, organizations, governments, to help them create organizations which are more future-proof and more strong. And that's how Toastmasters has helped me in my career.
Amazing. You just give me goals and clarity. Thank you.
Hi, Aditya.
Sorry.
Hello, world.
Yeah. Hi, Aditya. Srinibabu here.
Hi, Srinibabu.
Yeah.
Connect on Facebook.
Am I audible?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you for sharing wonderful tips. But when I applying this emotional connect in the table topics, during the table topics, I always feel like drunk and drive. After table topics, okay, I spoken something, I to speak something.
Yeah.
So how to connect that?
All right, yes, Srinibabu, I'm losing you, but I think I've got the question, which is how do you connect with the audience during table topics when you're already preoccupied, isn't it?
Correct. This emotional connect, how do apply in the table topics?
See, there is a prerequisite. See, the prize of ability, the prize of connection requires a price. The PRIZE requires a PRICE, and the prize of connecting with the audience requires a prize of being carefree on stage. It's a luxury that very few speakers have, but all of you can work on that luxury. What do I mean by that? So being carefree on stage is the ability to not be preoccupied with anything else except being mindful at that moment with your audience. Now, it seems philosophical, but it's not. It's pretty simple, actually, as is most philosophy. When you go on stage, leave alone a table topic, even a prepared speech. What is occupying you at that moment? Your script. Yeah, you think you're not looking at your script, but everybody can see your mind on your script. Probably you're occupied with, are my hands in my pockets? What's my evaluator going to tell about me? And all of those things. So you're occupied with so many things that you're not able to live in the moment and be your true self. How do you know that? It's because you're a different person on stage vis-a-vis having a dinner conversation on the dining table with your family. And why are you more comfortable with your family having dinner and talking? That's because you're not preoccupied with anything else. but on stage, you're preoccupied with a lot of pressure and tension. So practice and the ability to look at your own past and see, hey, I'm still alive. For example, you've done 100 table topics, Srini Babu, and you're still afraid of table topics. And then you have to look back and say, what's the worst thing that can happen? I still have friends. I'm still a Toastmaster. Nobody has thrown me out of the club, and I'm still alive. And so the worst thing that can happen today can't be worse than anything that's happened in the last 100 times. And therefore, you become okay with who you are, and you become carefree on stage. So even though you may not know the answer to a table topic, at that moment, your heart is not pulsating. You're carefree on stage. The moment you're not careless, but carefree on stage, you realize you're able to automatically connect with the audience.
Hi,
Thank you so
Aditya.
much. Hello there.
Sumitra here. Hi. I hope you're doing well. So this is something similar to Vandana's question. So you said speech, and the main elements for a good speech are content and the impact.
Yep.
But how do we create and curate this relatable content? Or is it, by delivering more speeches, by practicing? Of course, practice makes perfect. But is it, reading quite a bit and converting everything to content? Because there are some of us who might not have the entire knowledge or entire memory of what we read and convert it to a possible, speech or a conversation that can take place. So what are your tips, or what are your methods of creating this content, apart from probably zooming out and understanding what the audience wants? I hope I'm clear. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Thank you. And I love the way you started your question as like writing a mail. I hope you're fine. Thank you. All right. So I'm doing fine. I hope you're fine too. Was that Sunita or Sumitra? Sorry.
Sumitra.
Sumitra. So Sumitra, if you look at the wisdom of the Upanishads, it talks 3-step process to become wise: Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. What that means is Shravana is the ability to know more, the ability to gain knowledge, the ability to read a vast variety of things, the ability to gain perspectives. So you're right, that's very important to create content. By reading more, you have more dope to write, isn't it? If you know about 4 different fields, you're able to take examples from 4 different fields. Think of your favorite speaker. Imagine 3 minutes, I speak about literature, history, management, current affairs, geography, and then arrive at the top. You're going to be wowed, isn't it? So good speakers have Shravan, which is they know, they read more, they accumulate more knowledge. But it doesn't stop there. The next is Manana, which is what do you do with that knowledge? The ability to see the unseen, the ability to hear the unsaid, the ability to extract insight from an otherwise ordinary incident is Manana, which is seeing things with clarity that didn't exist before. For example, if I told you 5 years ago that some stupid boy in Marina Beach in Chennai scratched my car, and that speech is going to win me the world championship of public speaking, you would have laughed at me. Because you say, Aditya, thousands of cars get scratched every day. Please don't make a speech on that and hope to win. That's because at that point, both of us did not see the unseen behind that incident. That was a very small incident, but in that lies a message that can change people's lives. So the ability not just to gain knowledge, but to have a deeper insight, the ability to drill down an inch more and look at an insight that the world hasn't seen yet out of an ordinary incident is Manana, right? So Shravana combined with Manana, that is the ability to know things as well as the ability to intuitively pick insights from ordinary things, are both important elements of a good speaker. So let me place a bet, Sumitra. From the time you woke up this morning till now, there have been at least 6 incidents worthy of a world championship of public speaking that has happened to you already. And my question to you is, have you noticed them? And if so, have you extracted a learning from them which may be useful for your audience?
Thank you, Aditya. Let's take one last question.
Hi, this is Srinivas. Can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Srinivas.
Yeah. So just hi, happy evening, Beverly. So basically, like I want to check how to connect emotionally in terms of humorous perspective. Like, so there is like too risky sometimes. Like, no, whether our humor is going to work out on the audience. Of course, like most of the times I give humor from my own examples, but I'm connecting emotionally with the humorous person. So that is something like which I always find like some challenge. Like, so today I just want to see some insights from you in terms of connecting emotionally.
And Srinivas, if I can speak for all 80 people here, that is a common challenge which everybody would put their hands up with, except some of your Bangalore comedy kings, and you have some terrific humorous speakers there. But it's a common challenge because unlike inspiration, humor has many more dependent variables. What is dependent variables is you take the same joke and crack it. You take a joke that worked in the area contest, it may not work in the division contest. Or you take the same joke that, say, a CK cracked, and you crack it, nobody laughs. So there is so much more than just the joke. It's the person who says it. It's the lightness that you have. You shouldn't laugh at your own joke, or you shouldn't crack it too seriously. There are so many variables. However, two insights that may be useful for you, Srinivas. One is, for humor to work, you need to find out what type of humor comes naturally to you. Let me give you an example. I'm a big fan of the 60s, 70s, and 80s Las Vegas scene in the US. Not the gambling, but the amazing singers and stand-up comedians. One of my favorite stand-up comedians is Don Rickles. He's no more, but he used to be the world's best insult comedian. His style of comedy was impromptu. He never had a script for 50 years. A headliner in Las Vegas, he never had a script. He would go on stage and pick on people's ethnicities or backgrounds or whatever it was, and poke fun, impromptu, spontaneous, and people would go laugh so loud, and everybody would want to be insulted by him, right? That's one kind of comedy. At the same time, there was another guy called Bob Hope. Bob Hope is a comedian who's textbook comedian. He would take a little book with him wherever he goes, take down stories that has humor, go back home, file it, memorize it all, and go on stage and make people laugh, joke after joke after joke, right? Rodney Dangerfield is one such thing, who goes line after line. Now, if they swapped with each other, they would have been big flops. So similarly, you need to find out what kind of humor you like. Now, I've realized that I love spontaneous humor, especially when I have a live audience. I love poking fun at people in the first row, or I like incorporating what's happening with me. Like, for that, I'm carefree. I think Sumitra started by saying, "Hi, how are you doing?" So I just poked fun, saying, "Hey, Sumitra, you started it off like an email." It didn't hurt her, but if I had a live audience, that might have created a laugh. But you don't need to do that if you find that too tough. You can prepare your jokes, but ensure you're following your own way of doing it. But to conclude, there's enough science, or there's enough perceptive conclusion now, Srinivas, to show us that you don't need humor to create the same effect. So humor can be substituted by certain other tools of public speaking that end up creating the same effect. The same part of the human brain gets activated, just like humor would do. For example, an exciting anecdote, a startling statistic, a quote that is really good. All of these trigger the same question that is really thoughtful. All of these trigger the same parts of the brain as a joke does. A joke is a shortcut because it removes the ego of the audience. If I come to an audience and say, "Guys, I'm going to tell you about the meaning of life," you're going to yawn and say, "Who is he to tell me about life? I know about it." But if I start with a joke, there is no ego between us. But if you're not good at humor, there are other tools that will help you as well. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, the one last question from the chat. She says, "Sometimes success gets into my mind, which leads to me falling behind. How do we deal with this kind of problems?"
Success. If success gets to your mind, what was the second line? Sorry, Ayappa.
It leads to me to falling behind. success comes to our mind and it leads falling behind. So what to do about it?
For success not to get to your head and failure not to get to your heart, you need to cultivate what modern science or ancient spirituality would call objectivity, which is seeing things in the right perspective and proportion. Now, after my 2017 Vancouver World Championships, the first thing I had to go back to my room was to complete a PPT for my boss, which I had said I would send it that evening. Now, people ask me, are you crazy? You have to revel in your championship mood. But I mean, and it's true, I was feeling happy. But the point is, let's look at this in proportion and in perspective. You see, the world champion of public speaking is among 30,000 people who are among a group of 400,000 Toastmasters, which is 0.0000 probably 0.1% of the world. So in that little fish pond, we are good. So while it's useful to be happy about it, there's no point to take success to your head or failure to your heart, because it's still nothing dramatically different. And then your definitions of success change. If you become a world champion, but people around you don't like you to celebrate it with you, are you really successful? So when you're seeing things in proportion and perspective, most of the time, the objectivity you have today when you're advising your friends, we're all philosophers when it comes to advising friends, isn't it? Hey, don't take it to heart and stuff. You're able to bring that real time to your own life. That is by building objectivity. This call is too short for us to discuss how to build that objectivity, but there is a pursuit that you need to take to see things in its size, cut things down to size. Then neither success or failure will affect you. And that's the core principle of every philosophy, isn't it? Equanimity towards success and failure, measurement.
Thank you so much, Aditya. I think we are done. We're almost 8:30 now. So thank you very much for all your wonderful tips on how to elevate as a wonderful speaker. And definitely these tips will help us from the budding Toastmasters, to the senior Toastmasters. So thank you once again for your time. And I'll hand it over to our President, Toastmaster Deepika.
Thank you, Ayappa. Thank you, Aditya, for this wonderful session. If we were in a live meeting, this would be the time where I'd hand over a plant to you and say thank you and shake hands with you on stage. But since I can't do that, please imagine me doing that right now. Thank you so much for taking the time out and the patience to answer all the questions that were thrown at you. Big thank you. And can we give all our role takers, all the speakers, everybody who was a part of today's meeting a big round of applause? I know everyone has been saying, most of the GEs who have been a part of our meeting has always commended us as a committee for these online meetings and have always told us that we're doing a great job. At this point, I want to stop and thank one person who has been the backbone of all these meetings. Today's meeting, at one point, we had 88 people online. And I would honestly say that all 6 meetings that have happened so far have been smooth, have been seamless, each meeting getting better than the other, is solely because of our VP Education, Ayappa. He makes sure that every meeting, he is bringing some sort of innovation. He is bringing us excellent GEs from the outside. Today, he brought us Aditya. He's making sure that every meeting is chock-a-block with something for all of us to look forward to, and that we're not letting the limitations of not being face-to-face come between the quality of our meetings. So Ayappa, thank you so much. Thank you for being the backbone behind all of this that's happening. And we genuinely could not do this without you. So thank you so much for that.
My pleasure, Deepika.
And with that, I will quickly move on to the awards for today's meeting. We had a lovely meeting, fantastic time, and the best evaluator today goes to the person who has decided not to show us his face for the last 6 weeks, Toastmaster Vaidyanathan. The best role taker, we have a tie between our TOD and our GE, Toastmaster Alok and Toastmaster Soma. The best speaker of the day goes to Toastmaster Srijat. So can we give all of them a big round of applause? And Thank you all so much for joining us. For all our guests who were with us from across borders, thank you for being a part of this meeting. It was a pleasure to have all of you. With that, I call to a close meeting number 1211. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless. Take care and have fun. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So hope we can get a recording for this session.
Thank you, everybody.
Hello.